some crazy scenes going on by central China. Let's take a look at the map, and we're looking at the Henan region of China right now. It's central eastern part of China. If you go globally here, go out, we're in China here. That's basically the central part of China. The western part is pretty much uninhabitable. So if you go in, this is Henan right here. And then right now we're seeing scenes out of Zhenzhou. Zhenzhou right here in the Henan region. And what scenes are we seeing there? It's very similar. I mean, it's not to the point where they're swimming in the swimming pool of the prime minister or anything, but we're seeing some unrest. I'm going to show pictures here. I'm not going to play the video because YouTube doesn't like the tension. If I just go screenshot, what you're seeing are people trying to get their money out of a bank. So this isn't happening all over China, to my knowledge. This seems to be only in this central region right now that is happening. But people rolled up on the bank like, I need my money. They were throwing bottles at security. Security were dragging people out. Things are bad. If they do this in China, things are bad because they won't hesitate to get rid of you. So those are people who have nothing to lose. That's why they're in that position. That's why they're protesting. And they're just trying to get the money, their own money. They're not trying to rob the bank. They're trying to get their own hard-earned money. First time this story came on my radar was in May. Chinese depositors left in dark as 3 local banks freeze deposits. So at the time, they didn't get any information about what was going on. These 3 banks. We do have a little bit of information, not that much information now. So they started freezing assets. They said at least 178 million. So that's not a lot of money when you talk about the scale that I'm going to be talking about. Of course, to the people there, I feel for them. This is outrageous. Imagine the money you have, digital money in the bank, because it's just not even on paper. It's digital until you go there and get the funds. And they say, no, you can't take your funds out. How do you pay your bills? These banks were lending money and holding money, bank accounts for small, medium-sized businesses. How do they pay their workers? So they froze all these deposits on April 18th, and people are like, what's going on? What's going on? All they said was they were upgrading internal systems. Okay, go ahead and upgrade those systems and give me my damn money. But that's not what happened. While nominally small, China's numerous local banks have outsized significance because they lend to small and mid-sized firms, so their activity can be an indicator of the health of the economy, the world's second biggest after the United States. So their bank earnings and asset quality are widely expected to deteriorate due to reduced business activity brought about by strict pandemic containment measures. So this is why this article caught my eye, because when they say this activity was brought about by strict pandemic containment measures, that's just a fancy way of saying the government did it. You're trying to blame something else. Reuters is, it's one of those news sources you have to go to at times, but to me, it's not showing the whole picture. It's accurate. It's not, I don't think it's too slanted, but when you say strict pandemic containment measures, these are clearly government actions. So the government did this. So the government caused an environment where you're expected to see deterioration through reduced business activity, meaning that these companies aren't going to have as many consumers. So this raises the prospect of economic contraction in the second quarter of the year. I think at this point, China was well aware of the dangers of inflation, that they weren't going to be able to stop not just inflation, but prices increasing due not just to their doing, but to things outside of their control. Then the next time I pick this article up, you listen to this. In June 16th, they were planning on protesting in Henan, the first region I showed you that's south of Zhenzhou. They were going to protest there, but what happened? China's got everybody on these digital apps. So they said, we don't know for sure that it's connected, but it was funny how they were going to protest, and all of a sudden there was this health risk, and it turned their codes red. What does that mean? That means you can't get on the train. So the depositors about a month ago, were planning to travel to the central province of Henan this week from across China to protest against an almost 2-month block now at this point on accessing their money. So it's at least 178 million, but it's more than that in total. They're talking about billions that have been frozen that would have been transferring back and forth. Rights group have warned that China could use this surveillance infrastructure to stifle dissent. So without a green code on your smartphone app, citizens can't get on public transportation. They don't really roll with cars like that everywhere down there. It's so crowded. So you can't get around. You can't get on public transportation. You can't get into restaurants and malls. This is exactly what the pro-authoritarians in the United States want and did in places like New York and California, as well as the right to travel across the country. One of the depositors who's trying to get their money back said they are putting digital handcuffs on us. They're not using their full name because they're probably not even their real names because they're afraid the government could retaliate. It's as easy as getting their name out of the article and then putting it in the app. You're a red. Your social credit score, I don't know if that's fully launched or if it's still in beta stage, but they could turn their codes red. Obviously, that's a health code. The National Health Commission said in a note to Reuters, the use of the health codes should not be expanded without authorization and cannot be assigned other than in connection with the prevention of and control of the epidemic. So they're trying to say, well, we wouldn't do that unless it was a health thing. It was a coincidence, though, that this happened. Another person said they found their health code turn red the morning of June 12th after he registered the day before to travel to Henan. So it gets more strange because it's like the day before I was traveling to Henan and they know protests were going to happen in Henan, and now his code is red. That brings us to what you saw today, the images from these protests, and they're demanding their bank deposits. Here we go. Things in the world are getting strange. There's no doubt about that. Several people protesting in the city of Zhenzhou over the freezing of deposits by some rural-based banks said they were injured on Sunday when heavy-handed security personnel dispersed the crowd. That's very nice in China. I mean, you could be unlived. They were telling their customers at first they were upgrading their internal systems, but at the end of the article, we saw that there's a little update here, and this is the only place I saw Reuters updated. It's funny how Reuters, why would they put this? I don't know. This seemed like it should have been a separate article, maybe. I don't know. But they said the banks are under investigation by the authorities for illegal fundraising, the state-run Global Times reported. So now the story changed from we're updating our systems to we're being investigated. Okay, what do I got to do with my money? I got bills to pay, kids to feed, mouths to feed, things to buy, people to pay. That's why it got heated. 5 officials were subsequently punished for misusing the health code system. Wow, I didn't know that. That was after the other one. So we know for sure they're saying something was wrong. More than 1,000 depositors from across the country had planned to gather last month to try and withdraw their money, but were unable to, what we just talked about, and because it switched to no travel. Then they said 5 officials were subsequently punished for misusing the health code system. So that seems like an acknowledgement that was wrong. I could be completely out of line here. Here's my takeaway from this. I really think China's preparing for war. And it's not a lot of money when you talk about, well, they're preparing for war. But I'm just wondering if it's a test case. Just like Shanghai lockdowns. Can we lock down a city? What city's better to practice than Shanghai? Now, if you had, I don't know, if you had locked down bank accounts in Shanghai, it probably would have been pretty crazy. So they go to these rural banks and say, shoot, what happens if we lock down these banks? When do governments really need money? Where did income tax get spawned from? Whenever a country goes to war, they need hella cash. So in times of inflation, your cash isn't as valuable. One of the ways to stop inflation is to be able to stop the flow of money. Inflation is, expanding the money supply through debt or printing it, basically, just adding more money to currency. So one of the ways to stop that would be to stopping the money in currency. You don't let those small banks get their money. They don't get to pay their workers. Their workers don't get to put that money into currency. So I could be completely out of line because it would have to be done at a much larger scale to help counter inflation, because that's just one section of the country. But if you test it out there, you see what threshold, can we use the health code to keep people at home? How well does that work? How do people move when they they can't pay their bills? You gather information. You have to understand how China views warfare. It's gathering information, it's preparing, it's knowledge. So now they know how people will act. You can expand that. You can scale it as needed. Right now, we're in turmoil in the United States. And I think we're in such turmoil that I'm expecting our president to resign tomorrow. July 11th. That's how bad things are. If they don't go, if they're not going to make a move on Taiwan now, they never will. Let me know what you think. Take care.